So welcome to Take a Place at the Self-Advocacy Table, and I'm Ellie Jarvie with Disability Rights Wisconsin.
And I'm Chad Sobiek with People First Wisconsin. Welcome, everyone.
All right. We are so glad you're here, and we're going to keep this interactive. It's a little bit different than the description and the presentation. Just full disclosure at the beginning, we promised you a few resources that just aren't quite ready yet. You know how it goes when you're putting out new materials. Everybody needs to take their look at them. Lawyers need to make sure things are right. So if you're here specifically looking for some of those fillable letters, we will get those to you. I can take your name and email, or you can call our info line, which I'll have their info later on in the show, so that you can get those. But we'll be doing some general advocacy discussions, and we really hope this is an interactive presentation.
I just want to thank everybody for coming ahead of time. I think this is going to give a lot of informal discussion to self-advocates that are just starting in their journey.
Yeah, Chad and I really see that we're all experts in the room, right? Everybody's the expert on their own experience. And so we really want to hear, we want to talk, but we also want to hear from you what's worked for you, tips that you have to share with each other. So just before we jump into that, a little bit about our two organizations. So there's the vision for Disability Rights Wisconsin, that all persons with disabilities and their families shall be empowered to exercise and enjoy the full extent of their rights and pursue the greatest possible quality of life. Ooh, a lot of words to string together there. Right. Okay, so this is the slide I get excited about. What's our core values? You know, a lot of big ideas there, and hopefully they're ideas that you believe in too. We've got things like diversity, dignity, independence, accessibility, inclusion, human rights, and liberation. So there we go. I am not going to bore you with all the programs that we have. Suffice it to say, we have a lot of them. You might have seen the booth out there. You might have been to another session done by some of my DRW colleagues and coworkers. When you call, you don't necessarily need to know which one of these buckets you fit in, okay? The intake staff will help you figure that out. It's just probably important to know that if you have an issue where you feel like your rights are violated, where you've been a victim of crime, if you're having a problem with any of your support programs or services and you're stuck, you can give Disability Rights a call. We try at first to support your own self-advocacy efforts. So we might not just jump in and do something for you. We would rather do something with you. Okay, now we're on to People First.
All right, so our mission is to provide opportunities for people with disabilities in Wisconsin to speak up and be heard about healthcare, voting, employment, housing, and transportation issues.
Awesome. Anything you want to say about People First Dane County, Chad?
I am the president of the People First Wisconsin. It's actually the Madison chapter. There is several chapters throughout the state. What the chapters do is they all identify issues that they're passionate about. So, for example, mine is the caregiver crisis. We have people that care about transportation. That's another one. And there's also another member who is involved in the housing part of it. So we do have a ton of different areas we focus on. So if anyone is interested, I would give you my email and or contact if you want to be part of the chapter. So the meetings we typically discuss what our next steps are for whatever we're working on. Right now we're in the middle of working on accessibility for certain restaurants, especially like State Street area where it's not very accessible. We are supposed to meet with a restaurant owner to talk about different things we can do to address that, because I don't know why, but for some reason restaurants don't have the same qualifications or don't follow the same rules in accessibility. So we're working on that. We also do like fun social things, like we were gonna do something with bird watching, but the weather is kind of getting too cold for that. But we are gonna have go to Ian's Pizza for, I guess, our vice president, who unfortunately isn't here, but there's a Thanksgiving pizza that he wants. So he encouraged us, we're going to go to Ian's for that. So it's not just advocating as a big focus, but there's also fun things tied in there. We're always coming up with ideas. We talked about renting out a movie theater to go see a movie, different things like that. So.
Do you always meet at the same time every month, same day, or
The meetings kind of depend on the availability of the people involved. So Carrie Gartsky, who is working the registration tables, she's our advisor. So she has a Zoom account. So me, Carrie, and our vice president work together to coordinate the meetings. We've tried to set a recurring schedule, but everyone's lives are so busy and sometimes that doesn't happen. But we do kind of follow up and try to be more interactive. And some areas are struggling with their chapters where they don't even have an advisor. So I think we're doing okay. It's just kind of I wish it was more consistent, but right now it's just not. So, I came up with some self-advocacy tips, since this is a self-advocacy session. I have them bullet pointed up here, but I will read them. Start by understanding what you need. So your needs are very, very crucial in being able to identify what assistance and support you'll get. You have to be very clear that it's not a need and something you just want, because if it's something you just want, it's harder to get them to say yes. Be long-term care services or whatever else. Be able to say why you need it. Why? How does this impact your daily life? How does this impact your ADLs, which is activities of daily living? That is something I learned when I went through the process of getting my wheelchair a few years ago. Because I have the seat elevating function, which basically allows me to reach and get access to places I otherwise wouldn't. So I got that coordinated with my ADLs to say, my medicine cabinet is up high. I can't reach my medication if I don't have this, or if I go to the grocery store and I'm by myself. I need to be able to reach things. Yes, I can ask for help, but it's not always easy to find somebody. So kind of encouraging that independence there. And then practicing communicating clarity. So like be clear and kind of direct about what you're asking for. I think that's very important. Be informed about your rights and resources available to you. This is something I could probably spend the whole rest of the session on, but I won't. But know that when you, like, Disability Rights Wisconsin is a great resource available to even people that are in long-term care that have to deal with appeals and trying to get services or medical equipment. They've helped me a ton of times with getting supportive home care hours and things that I need to be successful. So that's very important too. And we will give you our contact information, and Ellie will give you theirs so you guys are informed. Practice speaking up confidently and assertively, not aggressively. You don't want, what I mean by that is you want to be assertive, but you want to make sure you're not being to the point where the people that are trying to help you feel like you're just being rude to them. So making sure they know that you need that thing, but not to just shut the door and be rude and hang up with them, because I don't think that gets too far. And this is really important, and this is what self-advocacy is all about. Really building that network of friends, family, professionals, whoever you think is a good support network for you can be absolutely crucial in your advocacy. A lot of my friends and people I've met have really helped me grow in my advocacy journey. So if you build that network, you really will get more and more opportunities. And I think this conference is a great example of that. So that is all I have to say on my slide. I will hand it back to Ali.
So we are wondering what advocacy tips you and the group might have. So this is your time to share any tips or tricks that you've come up with in your own self-advocacy journey. Anybody feel like sharing? Just raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you.
Hi, my name is Amber. I'm from Brookfield. I think one of the things that I've learned about advocating with myself is to not only get in contact with your program advisor and stuff like that, but also to be patient with them as well, because I mean they're not just seeing you, they're seeing a whole bunch of people. But also, while you're being patient, maybe then continue to gather more information about what it is that you are wanting to do or have changed. Otherwise, then, if you just say, oh, I want to go to the store, and they're like, okay, well, why? And you say, well, I don't know. They're going to be like, I'm not going to do that for you. So.
Thanks, Amber. Good tips. Anyone else? Chad, I know, has a story he wants to share about his experience in self-advocacy.
Yeah, I definitely, I maybe next year I'll do a whole session because of the whole thing I want to get into on this. But there there's a big thing around appeals in long-term care, whether it's IVAS or family care. People feel like when they get denied for service or whatever it may be, that's the end. And that couldn't be further from the truth. You just have to keep fighting. I was advocating for an air conditioner for my apartment because I have a physical disability. But with that physical disability also comes a lot of spasticity issues, a lot of muscular issues. So if I don't have adequate cooling in my apartment, I really struggle with that. It's not just being uncomfortable, like warm uncomfortable, it's also physically uncomfortable because my body doesn't function the same in either of the extremes, whether it be hot or cold. So I asked my care manager, and I told her my concern, and I told her that I didn't have the funds in my budget to purchase one on my own, and the apartment complex doesn't provide them. And they told me no, that was more of a want and there was not enough of a medical need. So I said, all right, you want to play hardball? Let's go. So I went to my doctor and I said, this is what has happened. This is what I'm trying to get. And he submitted a letter. He sent me a letter of recommendation due to my muscle spasticity and different things. And then I also got some documentation from my physical therapist and how these different things affected me. I went through a couple back and forth, but eventually, with the help of DRW and the help from my doctor and therapist, I turned that denial into an approval. And that is something everyone in this room, I hope, will truly think about when they get denied for service. If it's something that you truly need to live your best life and be independent, you should keep going, because if you know what you need better than anybody else knows what you need. So if you truly believe you need it and the need is there, I know that for me, I'm going to keep fighting. So I hope that's something that I can inspire you all to do.
Awesome. Let's give Chad a hand. Thanks for sharing that example. I couldn't help but thinking as you were sharing your story, Chad, how that mirrored some of the tips you gave us at the beginning and also the tips that Amber gave, when she was talking about being patient. How long did that process take you?
Unfortunately, or fortunately, I will say, fortunately, it was the winter when I started this, but when I truly was struggling to when I truly was struggling, I went through a whole summer without one, and I live on an upper floor. And I was finally like, all right, how am I going to solve this problem? And I thought, well, it's winter. They're not in high demand. If I can get, if I can get it now, it's probably better so I don't have to go through another summer. But it took me about 6 months to do because there was a lot of back and forth. They were also saying, well, you could go to your local community and you could go to your local library. And that answer is no. Because if it's too hot in my apartment, it's too hot outside. Why am I going to go outside when I'm struggling in my own home? So it does take some time. It does take some patience. But perseverance will always win.
Awesome. That's a good description. I can't help but think that seeing that long view, I like what you did strategically, started that in the winter. And both you and Amber too talked about pulling together your resources, right? I heard that in your story too. Talk about how it was talking to some of the resources and the people who you had to get in your corner.
I had an amazing ombudsman. Sorry, I can't say that word very well. By the name of Mark, and he did a lot of the continuing to help me fight. One thing I've learned in my self-advocacy journey is it's actually really hard to do by yourself. Like, you can say everything right. You can do everything right. But I think sometimes people think of it, oh, that's the person with the disability talking. And really, when you can get somebody else to say, I'm working with this person, I know this person, I absolutely understand. I think when you can bring more to the table and somebody that knows you really well, I think that does a lot. Because another little part of this is they messed up on the air conditioning unit when they brought the air conditioning unit, and they brought a window air conditioner for a through the wall air conditioning sleeve. And they just kept telling me, no, it's good enough. It's good enough. And I'm like, no, this isn't good enough. The fact of the matter is, you didn't provide the services that the long-term care agency paid for. So, and it didn't work as well. It wasn't as efficient, and it wasn't giving out the same amount of effect. And Mark went back and he said, no, you put this in here. This wasn't what he asked for. This is not what he was approved for. This is not what my choice paid for. You guys are gonna fix this. And at that point, it was between the air conditioning company and myself. It wasn't really a my choice thing. But everybody supported me in saying, if you're going to do the job, you're going to do it right. You're not going to do it halfway. So even after there was advocacy that followed, so you probably add another month in there, maybe 7 months. But yeah.
Thanks for that additional detail. I think that's a great example of how we're the best experts on our own needs, and the advocacy doesn't stop, right? We have to keep at it. I liked what you said about interdependence too, right? And it's unfortunate, but discrimination and ableism is still alive and well in our society. And I don't have to tell you all in the room that. Sometimes just getting somebody else to say the same thing that you've been saying makes a big difference. I do a lot of advocacy for people getting in community mental health programs, particularly programs you might have heard of called CSP and CCS, Comprehensive Community Services. And those are designed, especially CCS, to be consumer-centered. And a lot of times those basic ideals kind of go out the window, and then all of a sudden, when I get involved as an advocate from DRW, sometimes I don't even really do anything all that special. I just show up in the room and say, I'm from DRW, and people will tell me, you know what, you won't believe it, all of a sudden the meeting's changed and people were paying attention.
It's amazing how fast you get people to turn face when you say the words disability rights Wisconsin. It is unbelievable. Please use them. Please use them. They're an amazing resource, an amazing tool, and it's just, you have to use them. Please use them.
It's amazing just how having a second person in the room can change the presence. I know I went through a disaster of an appeal myself, and I fought through it, and I originally was by myself, and I'm like, wait a minute here, I have to start this over, and I have to get somebody else involved, and when you start getting quote unquote legal people involved, I know that these technically aren't lawyers or anything like that, but when you start getting like big organizations or people like that involved, it's amazing how fast they get, I don't want to say get scared, but it's amazing how fast things change, because now you have more power over them, and it's like you're being discriminated against in your own appeals process if you're doing it yourself and you don't even have the right people to help you through that.
Thanks. And I want to clarify, Disability Rights Wisconsin hires people who are lawyers, and they hire people who are not lawyers, like Hope and I. We're general advocates, right? But we're supervised by lawyers. So, we can use that too. I can start the process, and I can say, I'm gonna staff this with my supervising attorney. And sometimes just saying those words is all that it takes for systems to move. So we have to use all the tools that are available to us. Amber's got something she wants to say.
Oh, I always do. But my thing I was going to say was that, there are people who have physical disabilities, and, some of us who have developmental disabilities. And sometimes it's even harder for those of us who have a developmental disability that don't look like we have one, because then you run into people who are of the prejudice of that. You say, I have a cognitive learning disability, and they're like, well, you don't look like you have one. And it's like, well, okay, yeah, but I do. And so then sometimes when you do like the disability assessment or screeners thing, I forget what you call it, but they're looking at you like you look like you're normal. Why do you need all these services? And it's like, because I have a disability. So it's kind of, I say all that to say that we're kind of all in the same boat.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story, Amber. I can relate. Have anybody heard the idea of invisible disabilities ever? Yeah. So, I have Tourette syndrome, again, a developmental disability that sometimes shows up and sometimes it doesn't. And so sometimes we end up, if it's not as noticeable, having to justify our need for services or our need for supports, right? And that can get very frustrating and draining over time. It's a very real issue. I think in general, when we can recognize that we're more alike than we are different, our disabilities might be different. And many of us have multiple disabilities, right? We might have a physical disability, we might have a sensory disability, we might have a mental health disability, but the common experiences of stigma, of exclusion, when we can band together and help each other out, a lot of things can change. And that's pretty exciting stuff. All right, so before I move on to some resources, is there anybody else who wants to share a story or has a comment that hasn't had a chance to speak yet? Fantastic. Tell us your name.
Gene, and I wanted to go to dentist, and I couldn't in my area, so I damped the torpedoes. So I had some help to get me a ride to someplace else, so I could get to the dentist.
Thank you, Gene, for sharing that story. I bet that wasn't easy to get to the dentist and get the help you needed.
Well, Marshfield went. I don't know what happened since the pandemic. I think they fired a lot of folk.
Let me ask this. Who else has struggled in this room to get dental care? Raise your hand. Yeah. So, I hear about that a lot with folks who are getting Medicaid have a hard time accessing dentists. And in fact, I think the Surgeon General wrote a report a number of years ago saying that dental care for adults on medical assistance is a big issue.
I just recently received a letter in the mail that my dental provider is no longer accepting Medicaid. So guess what? I have to go hunt for a new dental provider when we get back to Madison because now they no longer accept Medicaid. And I require to be put under anesthesia for all dental care. So whether that's cleaning, whether that's x-rays, broken tooth, whatever it may be, I need to be put under anesthesia for the dental care. I have a startle reflex and a gag reflex. I cannot sit still in the chair and let them work on my teeth. So now I have a whole nother task I have to go accomplish.
Advocacy. See, you're not alone in that issue.
And also, not to mention that, it's great when you can find a dentist that takes Medicaid, but sometimes it's hard to find a dentist that takes Medicaid, but also treats you more like a person and not a paycheck. Because I, not recently, but a few years ago, had a time where I went to a dentist that took Medicaid in Waukesha, and he could have been the greatest dentist in the world, but I wouldn't know it because when he started to work on my mouth to give me fillings, he didn't wait till the anesthetic was fully in effect. He started drilling. And so here I am going, the whole entire time. And I'm like, that hurts. And he's like, well, I have to get this done. And I'm like, okay, what? So you can get another person in here so you can make more money instead of treating me the right way so that maybe I might not get an infection or something down the road because you shoved something the wrong way. So yeah, I know exactly what y'all are going through.
Right. Yeah, that sounds tough. More issues to work on, huh? All right. Any more thoughts? I'm going to start as we keep thinking about things we work on together. I'm going to pass out some resources. Maybe I'll have Hope help me pass out some resources. This first is a general brochure. Have to bring some DRW material. And this is just about our protection and advocacy agency, or work at our agency, one of many programs that we have at DRW. And you'll also see our contact information on there in case that's something you want to take a look at. So just wanted to make sure that people had those resources. Before we move on to some more, some people first stuff. So do you want to say more about the website or anything? The website will be listed later.
Yeah, if so, the website is on the slide at the end. Sure. I didn't know. So, the website is peoplefirstwisconsin.org, and no internet. So, what is it? We'll try to get it up so we can show you. Allie can help me walk you guys through the website. But Cindy Bentley, who is executive director, her contact info is on there. She has an email on there. One that's direct. Oh, there you go. One that's directly tied to her People First work. If you're interested in getting involved in anything, whether it be the speaker series or different things where I think it's under who we are, I think. Try who we are. I think. Oh, they're there. So these are the staff. Actually, that email that you just had. Sorry, guys. That email that you just had on the slides might be Cindy's. I think they did some stuff to the website because I'm drawing a blank on how this is working. But if you scroll back up, to the top where the links are, there is an event calendar. And when we have different things going on, right now there's not a lot on there, but our board meetings are on there. They help with stuff like this, registering for SD. But when we have we have meetups that we do once a week, sometimes twice a week, but it was once a week. All that stuff will be listed on there. We just haven't started that back up because we took a break off for summer because everyone's busy. And then we took a break because the self-determination conference was coming up. But we plan on starting back up some stuff in November here. I don't have an exact date for you guys. But you will find all the new stuff that's happening on this page. So I wanted to make sure you guys saw that. So if you go to peoplefirstwisconsin.org and click on event calendar, that's where all that will be. So that's our website.
Awesome. Thanks. Appreciate that, Chad. I think that website redesign is just kind of part of the work we do, right? Some of the resources that I wanted to share with you today, I've heard that we've had some problems with the disability rights website and they're working on fixing it. So that's just technical difficulties happen. But one thing I did want to show you is a brand new resource that we have out. And this is a fact sheet. And I would, this is actually for people who live in what they call controlled residential facilities. Wow, it was a term I'd never heard. Anybody know what a controlled residential facility is?
Is it like a group home or?
Yeah.
Yep.
So you'll see on page 3 of this. That would be like an adult family home, a group home, or a CBRF. something called a certified residential care complex. CBRF is community-based residential facility. Thank you, Chad. So that's why CBRF and group home are kind of the same. It's it's a shortcut. Another one would be certified residential care complex, or for kids, a level 5 foster home. So does anybody live in one of these facilities right now? Okay, so good. The reason that I'm passing this out is this is an example of one of DRW's brand new resources. And whether you live in a facility or not, I think there are some things on here that could be helpful to you. And I wanted to show you this. It'll eventually be on the website, but now we have it printed out. And I also, because we got a lot of experts in the room, I wanted to get your ideas. Do you like this? Is it clear? Are there things that would be different for you? Because, we can write it, but until you guys use it and look at it, we don't know how helpful it's going to be. So I thought, what a great opportunity to talk to some experts in the room. So one of the things they talk about at the front page here is your home and community-based services rights. So home and community-based services, boy, what's that mean? Well, would that be a family care program maybe? Would those be things you get in the community? Yeah. So see, it's interesting because we kind of do a dance, right? We want to use the language that's in the Medicaid rule, and we want to make it accessible and easily understandable. So that's, kind of go back and forth on these things. Your person-centered service plan says you have the right to all the stuff we've been talking about earlier today. Get full support and have full access to the greater community and engage in community life. Look for employment and work in the community. Make choices about your personal resources. Get services in the community with the same access as people who do not use Medicaid home and community-based services. So I wanted to highlight that because no matter where you live, if you're using these services, those are some rights you have. We talked earlier about knowing your rights, and I think this is a really important one to use. And you all shared some really good examples of ways that hasn't been working for you and what you're doing to self-advocate so you get those services. Any thoughts about this? All right, Amber's got one.
Well, when you said about getting full support to have full access to the greater community and to engage in community life, like I get some of that through my day program, but then if I have something that I have to do after programming hours, I either have to rely upon the staff at my house to take me. And usually if I have to do that, then usually it has to be whenever that they're willing to do it on their day off, or I have to rely on family to take me. And it's like, well, they have lives, they work, they do other stuff, I can't expect them to take me everywhere I need to go and stuff. So I do see why that it's very important to have maybe like our own way of transportation, so that we can get around and not have to be a burden to someone else, which is why I advocate so much for transportation after programming hours, so that way people like myself and all y'all in here can be able to have a life outside of going to a day program.
Awesome, thank you. And I think transportation is one of those key issues that affects so many of us, right? And when we have good transportation options, a lot can work in our lives. And when we don't, it can be pretty tough. And again, I know I don't have to tell you folks that. You can probably all have your examples. Page 2 talks about, you have the right to choose where you want to live, to have privacy, dignity, and respect, and to be free from coercion and restraints. That's a big thing that Hope and I work on a lot. is helping people who are in those situations. So just to know that those resources are out there if those are issues that you encounter. Page 3 talks about the settings that we already talked about. I like this too on page 4, where it talks about having privacy, right? And that can be really tough in some of those congregate living or group living situations, but you do have that right. That you can pick your roommates, that you can lock your door, and that you can put furniture and decorate the way you want in your personal space. You can choose schedule activities, choose when you would like to eat at any time. Ooh, boy, what would that be like? I don't know about you, but I've worked in settings or know people who live in settings where they say, well, this is the time the house has dinner. Yeah. Or, well, yeah, no, we can't go there because not everybody wants to go. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Those aren't individual choices, are they? So, something to pay attention to. Ooh, here's another one that I see a lot. To have visitors of your choosing at any time. Ooh.
Is allowing us to basically choose when we want to eat, because sometimes, at the time that they decide to make the meal, you're not hungry, and then also choosing to have visitors whenever that we want to, we can schedule to have someone come over and pick us up and they're like, okay, let's go. Whereas I know in some places you had to be like, okay, well, I have to know like 2-3 weeks in advance when you're coming. And it's like, well, nobody's going to know that. We don't have a crystal ball that we can see into the future and go, okay, my grandma is going to come on February 24th of 2036, like it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and knowing these rights are in place, through Medicaid with the home and community-based service rule is helpful too, because systems will sometimes tend to move to what works easiest for the system or the workers and not the people being served. And we don't live our lives that way. Come August, when there's the next heat wave and we all want to show up at Chad's door and hang out with his air conditioning, we don't have to schedule that. We can just come over.
I would love to invite you out to my house, but it is not very big. Brett knows we can barely fit both of our chairs in the apartment to watch a Packer game. Sorry, guys. Brett did have
a question. So that Nix's.
We'll have to go find a bigger place to hang out that has air conditioning.
No apartment parties at your place, but yeah. Sorry, couldn't help myself. Some pieces on what to do if your rights need to be changed or limited. And they have to give you a client, they have to give you some notice, right? They have to give you some paperwork on that. They have to try positive things first. And this is where the letters that DRW is developing are going to be helpful. So one of those coming soon here, I'll pop back to our slides for a minute. Just like one or two. They're not all that exciting, but I feel like we'll put them up there anyway. For your entertainment, right? Just in case you want to look at something else. So the website, we talked about handouts you've got now. So coming soon, some of that's going to be these letters where if you have a rights restriction, you can put in what that restriction is and making sure that they're following these policies under the home and community-based services or rule. Because we hear that sometimes they're not. So, a provider or your guardian can't just say, well, we're not going to allow you to watch TV after 10 o'clock at night, right? They have to try some other things first if they believe that's a problem. They have to work with you. And if they do put a restriction in, they have to talk about what needs to happen so that can be removed. And so here's some more details about that on page 6. I won't go over to that in a lot of detail, but it's all there. So I just wanted to put out that coming soon, that there's going to be some more resources on ways to help you. And a lot of it is learning how to ask the questions, to know what's on your plan, to know why some changes are being made, and to work with your team so that everybody is there to support you and to work with you in the ways that are going to help you live your best life. All right. I've been talking a while. Anybody else have some resources or stories they want to share before we wrap it up here? Okay. I know we're getting going. We're ending a little bit early, but I think that's probably okay. I know we've had a long conference. You guys have had good attention and activity. I am going to give it to Chad to share some final words of wisdom before we say goodbye.
Thank you all for coming. I can't wait to get home and go to bed in my own bed tonight. But I really did enjoy doing this with you, Ellie. This conference has hopefully motivated me to speak on my own, and hopefully we can all motivate each other to have informative self-advocacy or whatever we want to speak about that empowers all of us. Thank you.
Thank you all. Keep doing the good work.